Hi everyone, and welcome to Craig's regular Zooms that we do here on the patrons. And I've got some patrons with me today, and we're going to discuss a few topics that are, some of which are topical and some of which are probably a bit more long-term. And I'm going to seed a few thoughts and we'll have a few discussions. Now, some of the things we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some of the predictions for India, because one of the patrons here is based in India, and I've made a lot of predictions about India in the past. So we'll talk about some of those predictions for India and what's coming up at the moment and where things might go. We've got another guest with us here from California, who's been asking about, how are we ever going to sort everything out in the world? I mean, places like California at the moment are suffering from massive homelessness over there. I mean, we don't see it on the news here much in the UK, but I know it's an endemic problem. Even the last time I went to California, which was quite a long time ago, there was already the beginnings of a lot of homelessness. And I remember talking in one of my videos going back in 2020, I think I was saying there's going to be a huge homeless problem in America, and that is really beginning to happen. So how can we sort these things, and is there any solution to it? Does it basically mean we might have to wipe everything out and start again? So we might address some of the ideas of things like earth changes and things like that. And once a couple of other questions also came up from one of our contributors who's asked about abortions, and this is another big question that's happening in America at the moment about the abortion laws that are all going to be potentially changed over there. I'm not quite sure what state they've got to, but Nicardo Avocado said, I'd love to hear your thoughts about abortion. I've been watching Matt Fraser, the medium, on YouTube videos, and during his readings, he often connects to the souls on the spirit side that were once inside the womb. Whether it was a miscarriage, abortion, accident, etc., it always shocks the person getting the reading. So hopefully we might be able to address all these things, and have a chat with my patrons that are on now, and you can unmute yourself, guys. And if you've got any questions, and whichever one we want to start with first of these issues. Should we take them? The first one I said was India. Let's do that one first. Because you were saying, Sheila, about some of the predictions that I've already made about India. You're saying they're coming to pass at the moment. Presumably some of this is in the Indian news, but we don't.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So as we're talking, I've got on my phone here, one of our newspapers in Delhi. It's called the Hindustan Times. It's like our equivalent of the Guardian or the Times over in the UK. And I'm reading it out. It's saying the ties between India and China will remain strained in the wake of a lethal clash in 2020. The US intelligence community has told lawmakers, as it also expressed concerns over any potential crisis between India and Pakistan. Now, later on, they also start talking about China as well. And immediately this came in my mind, your predictions, where you've talked about how the border skirmishes that are going on between India, China, India, Pakistan, etc., are going to get more heated. Now, this is coming from the US intelligence community, so it's not hearsay. It's something that, has been disclosed. Whether it's there to create problems, because one of the things America wants to do is be involved should there be a skirmish. I don't know whether they want to be involved in that. They want to help sort it out. I'm not sure what the actual reason is, but Biden, America have expressed concern. So very much the kinds of things you're talking about. And I think you said that we're going to have further skirmishes, which is a concern of mine because I live in northern India.
Yeah, and of course, northern India is going to be the place that's most affected because it's on the borders. And these are the thoughts I've had for that in the past, and also some of the things I can share with you now. I mean, India is a growing power. It's a rapidly growing power. We haven't even begun to see the potential of India. When you look at India in the past, it was perhaps the most powerful country on earth for a a long, long time, right the way back to the time when Alexander and the ancient Greeks first encountered India, and during all the times through its history, India has been right up to the time, perhaps just before the Raj, it started to decline. And then everybody came in, the British came in, the Portuguese came in, the Mughals came in as well before that, and basically stripped the wealth of India and its great gold and everything like that, you know. But India's growing again, and wherever power grows, we get challenges to that power. And we have power growing, of course, in China as well. We have a decline happening, which I think is going to happen now with Russia. I think Russia will see moving into decline, but becoming much more immersed with China. It's going to look east. It can't look west. It's going to look east. So we have at the north of India, we have an awful lot of troubles, and also, of course, Pakistan to its west as well. So the whole northern part of India is under threat. Now, my thoughts are the Chinese have been working for a long time to undermine India. You know, there's no longer this buffer between China and Russia, and that what came with Tibet, basically. And I feel there's going to be conflicts, particularly I feel the region of Assam. Now, I don't know how that figures, but I see a tea growing area as being a place that is under threat and with possible conflicts. And also all around where Bhutan was, all around Bhutan, which is still an independent area that wasn't taken over at the same time as Tibet. But I feel as if there might be threats to Bhutan as well in the near future. I think with India, it's going to be a country that is going to be, it's going to have many near nuclear conflicts. It won't have one, I feel, but I feel things will get very serious with Pakistan and China at the same time one day. They'll be fighting on two fronts. It's like when one makes a move, the other one does as well. And I feel that India will ultimately, I think there will be conflicts, or particularly to the north, northeast of India, that side particularly. I know there's lots of conflicts all around Nepal and all those type of areas, but I feel on the northeast of India we'll get some invasions, almost like people pushing down possibly into Bangladesh. And I think there will be, not this year, because I think it's going to be growing this year, but I think in maybe towards the end of 2023, 24 sort of time, I think we'll start seeing serious type of conflicts, particularly on the northeast of India. And maybe, you know, an armed conflict of some sort that does, a bit like what's happening in Ukraine. It doesn't push to nuclear war, but it can get pretty serious. But I see India becoming the winner of that, actually. Ultimately, I see people pushing in from that side and then India pushing them back out again in that period. And even India ultimately expanding its borders a lot more. And I feel Afghanistan, which is going to cave in more and more and become more of a problem, may become a place where India will put its focus and start even sending troops into Afghanistan. That's not this year, not 2022, but this is something I feel coming up in the next sort of 5 years or so. And when this happens, it will cause conflicts, of course, with Pakistan. But I feel that the world will kind of feel that India is the only country that can sort that place out. And people forget that Afghanistan for centuries was part of the old India, the old Bharat. And you know, because this is why all the Buddhist temples are in there, because they came from the times when Buddhism, you know, when they tore down the old history of the mountainside Buddhas, that was all from that era. So my thoughts are then, Sheila, that I think we have more troubles ahead. I think we'll see an awful lot more in the news about this. And I'll certainly give you my feelings and updates as things move on. We're talking also about earth changes as well, because this is something that Kathleen wanted to talk about. And in some respects, it's a bit like the world has gotten such a bad state. We feel like we're fleas infesting a dog, and maybe the dog wants to shake its fleas off, being us. I think the more people get into a more negative frame of consciousness generally, and the centuries of bad negative thoughts we've had, they do affect the Earth's movements itself. I think in northern India, for example, I'm seeing one day there's going to be a really big earthquake there, a serious problem that I feel will break dams, because I'm seeing dams breaking. Now, I'm not sure this is this year, but I see it in the future. I see broken dams. And also I feel that even the gorge dams in China will one day break. So there's going to be, this will be a big earth shifts that will come. And I don't know when the big one's going to come in California. I mean, people have been speculating that every year someone says it's going to happen. But I think we will get a lot of earth movements in time. I'm not sure that Edgar Cayce's kind of vision of a world where the magnetic poles move. I mean, every 11, I can't remember how many, the time scale, it's quite a huge time scale, but the magnetic poles do move every now and again. So it's not something that's fantasy, it's something that could actually easily happen. I think we will get great earth shifts at the time, I suppose, of the Great Awakening, really, because I think ultimately we're going to see an awakening. And I think once, you know, it was Kathleen, didn't you, asked about this to me just before we went on air here, asked saying, you know, we've got such a big problem here in LA particularly, where the energy has become horrible. I mean, LA used to be the place we all used to look to in the 60s and say, oh man, it's all happening over there, you know, and we'd all want to put a flower in our hair and go over there and so forth. And now we got no hair and no flowers. But the energy in LA has become quite toxic, I know, because people I know in LA have often complained about how it's become a different city. And same too with New York, because for some while New York was a fairly safe place to walk through the center of New York. Now that's becoming another worrying place, and law and order is breaking down more than it ever did. And I know you've got serious problems, the same with huge numbers of homeless people. So how do we sort that? Does it get sorted by major earth changes and an extinction of some of us, a wiping out? Or would it also be possible to change it? And I think this is the only way we're ever going to change the world, is if we change our attitudes to one another. You see, I see the answer to it all. You know, Sai Baba used to say, the answer is love. Now, what is your question, right? Now, we could apply that to everything with the problems of the world, you know? How do we deal with homeless? The answer is love, you know? How do we deal with poverty? The answer is love, because none of us share, none of us care about each other. Everybody wants to sort of take selfishly, a few want to accumulate it all. The answer has to ultimately be that we have to become more humanitarian. We have to not worry so much about, will the earth, you know, destroy us? Will comets hit the earth? Will there be an apocalypse? You know, these are all projections so often of people's fears, aren't they? Mankind has always thought there's going to be some terrible thing. The first Christians thought with the turn of the first millennium, 1,000 years after Christ, that's when the second coming is going to come and all the revelation is going to happen and everybody's going to be wiped out and only certain people are going to survive. It didn't happen, you know, and the same thing, everybody in there's this apocalyptic type of thinking that goes when we have a period of fear. So I think we need to try to see beyond that sort of idea. So if it's happening, let it happen. So what? What does it matter? Ultimately, all that matters is that people are safe and happy and kind and things work. So please turn your mic off. So the important thing is, I think, is that we look a little bit further than the darkness of the clouds and look to the light beyond, and that we think much more in terms of a collective humanitarian attitudes, because I think that would solve all the problems. That would solve the problems, all of them in the world. We're always going to get external problems. There's nothing we can do about it as people, is there? We're always stuck with it. You know, imagine being born in the First World War, being born in the Second World War, being born at the time of the sacking of Rome. You know, all of the periods in history have had their awful times. In fact, we've probably been in some of the best times ever, between the war, since the Second World War, when you compare it to the way so many others suffered. And most people lived their lives in serfdom or slavery, not just black people, but all white people too. The slavery was endemic, even in India. It was everywhere. So we have to keep moving forward with a humanitarian view, I think. And that way, whatever happens, should we really worry? Should we really worry? Even if the earth shifts, we can do something about it. Even if poverty is everywhere, because I think we're going to get a big drop in our standards of living in the world, we'll have to just rethink. I mean, you think about it. We've been here for millions and millions of years. We've got through it all. We even survived the dinosaurs, didn't we? Because we're what's remnants, we're what's left, we're the mammals that survived. We did pretty well. We're pretty good at surviving. So I don't think we need, and even we survived the First World War, the Second World War. We survived the bombing of Hiroshima and the rest. I mean, that could have blown up into a huge thing if Nazi Germany had those nuclear weapons as well. But somehow we get through. And I think we're kind of, all of us, in a way, kind of divinely blessed, actually, that we will survive. Whatever, we are magically destined to carry consciousness, and that's why we're here, isn't it? We are here to become divine consciousness, to merge with divine consciousness ultimately, and to become, I don't think we have any comprehension of the capabilities of ourselves, not just as physical beings, not just as our abilities to create machinery and things and computers and things, but our ability to even have the powers, I think, to change reality itself. And that's why I feel the power of consciousness is what it's ultimately all about, And that's how we fix things, How can we fix things? It's the only way we can ultimately fix things. We can try, patching the boat up, the leaky boat, with this solution and that solution, but ultimately we need a new boat. We need to be a new form of human being. And it's something I believe we once were, that if we go back far, far into the millions of years of human history, there were times when these things evolved for a while and were there, and needs changed and the energies of the world changed, perhaps as the solar system moves into a distant position in the Milky Way. But we go through these great yugas they talk about, and that we will come to another powerful period soon. And we will see amongst the earth, I believe, real super people, super human beings who display some of these powers. We've already seen a few of them, I think. But I think there's a great deal more of that to come. So I have great hope for the future. And I just hope this all happens in my lifetime, even the bad stuff, because I want to be here to witness this incredible age that I feel we're stepping into, which is an age where awakening becomes easy. At the moment, it's very hard because everything around us is all material. Everything, all our attention's being kidnapped all the time by everything and by our own fears. And that ultimately, I think, we will enter a time slowly where awakening becomes easier, where it becomes almost self-evident to be happy, for example. Okay, so that's my first thoughts. I've yapped on a lot there, though. So any comments, anybody, about and anything you would like me to pick up on some of these sort of thoughts here?
Yeah, humanitarian movement. I don't think this is going to come about through government or even through local people. Well, they call them do-gooders, but they are very good people trying to help others. But I think it may come about like it did in the 60s through celebrities, through music. I mean, that love and peace movement, it spread throughout because of the music and the young people becoming hippies and whatever, and they just sort of picked up on this love and peace idea, and they all wanted to go to India and meditate. So I think it could come about through that means.
Well, interesting thought there, Pat. But was that an expression of what was already happening, or was the cause of what's happening? I think the two went very much hand in hand. My thoughts are that it was what happened in the 60s was a number of things. There was a few major things that made it all happen. The music, came along. The Second World War had finished, and suddenly young people had money. So they had leisure time. They didn't have to worry about getting an apprenticeship today. We can go and get that further down the line. And so people were becoming more creative, which was very, very powerful. Also, we had the pill come onto the scene at the time too, which I think was also tremendously important, because women could think very differently about sexuality, which they could never do before. And that created a whole different attitude of kind of sexual freedom, as we had cultural freedom. And then, of course, we had LSD, and we had magic mushrooms and all the rest of it. That was a huge force, not necessarily for everybody, but for many of the sort of intelligentsia of the world. Suddenly they were all following the paths of people like Aldous Huxley, and they were seeing incredible expansions of their consciousness. You stick all this in the mix, and something incredible happened. The only problem was, because I think most of that was fueled a lot because of LSD, actually, not just the music, but it was short term. You see, it couldn't sustain itself. It was something that perhaps gave people an insight, gave you a glimpse of what was possible, but didn't actually deliver the goods to the point that you could sustain. It got you high, but you didn't remain high. You weren't being high, So all that faded away gradually. And a lot of the great minds from that period became now the leaders of industry, the people that run Apple, the people that run Google, the people that run Virgin Airlines, and so forth. Those people went into society and still working and still doing stuff, but, perhaps copped out some of them. But we do need the thing that I think fuels it most is spiritual awakening, a sudden awakening of people. And I think this has to come. I don't think we need an artificial way of doing it. It has to come as a permanent understanding. And I think what we saw in the Renaissance of that period was a glimpse of what the world could be. It was very naive. It became easily corrupted. Talking about California there earlier on, it blossomed in places where you would least expect it to happen. And I think we can get that type of thing again, but it has to be something where it's a permanent thing. And I think this will come through people who are extremely awake and come into this world. I mean, I'm talking about, the likes of people like Sai Baba and the great teachers and avatars that may come, I think, mainly through India, because India's got the ripe soil for it. It's the only place on earth that can allow the nurturing of that type of consciousness. It's for the young. So a young child.
Are you talking about Sai Baba Shridi? I'm sorry. Are you talking about Sai Baba Shridi?
Sai Baba Shridi, Sai Baba, Satya Sai Baba, and also Prima Baba, who's supposed to be the third one to come to follow. There's 3 avatars, allegedly. But then that doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the focus, because I think others will come. I think there will be a lot of awakened people. And I think that's the only way we can do it. When you really meet somebody, like I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of awakened teachers, and there's something about it that you can't explain in words. Your consciousness changes when you get what they call the darshan. When you're with them and you're with them, you're lifted, and everything seems so simple and easy and self-evident and obvious. And I think that's the way it'll go in the world. I think that's what will happen. I think it will be simple and easy, and we'll all start waking up. Perhaps I'm naive, perhaps
Not really, because I do remember now when I was young, I was talking to somebody about meditation and what can be possible through meditation, and back came the question, what were you on, what were you taking? Because the person had only experienced these things through taking drugs.
Yeah, you have to do it the hard way.
Yeah.
You have to put the work in, I mean, I think there's a place for them, actually. I think there's a place for them, but not in a place in society, because it ended up as a complete, ended up with one of my friends set himself on fire, when he took LSD, and that obviously it's got to have some form of It was in the hands of the shamans before. It would be better if it could be in the hands of the shamans again. You know, the shamans in South America still do it, but that's been hijacked, and there's become a whole industry now where it's legal. You know, it used to have this. They used to have the soma in India, which was the magical plant, which is all through the Upanishads. There's all talks about that in the Rig Veda, which was the spiritual plant that they used to take. It was all in the African cultures. It was in Siberia, all over the world. There were shamanistic places, and a person would approach these things, wouldn't approach them lightly. You know, these were things that were life-changing and potentially destructive to you. So there's perhaps a place for those things, but I think for all of us, that, you know, those things are like a rite of passage in some respects. But I think hopefully we're still there. Yeah, camera's still going. Yeah, sorry about that. I keep getting a problem with the camera. I had it a few days. The camera's tripped out, man. So
the sound is still good.
One more time. Yeah. Anyway, so that's my thoughts. Any comeback on that? You know, what do you think?
I mean, I did have two friends who actually cycled to India from the UK, who just got on their push bikes and went. And they went to all the ashrams and did all the meditation and everything. But they were still smoking dope.
Yeah.
It didn't stop them smoking. They couldn't sort of see how they could get their high without the dope.
I tell you, I think the best person to read on that is Be Here Now by Baba Ram Das. He was originally, what was his name originally? I've forgotten his first, what he was, Dr. He was from Harvard with Timothy Leary in that. He went and met a guru there who completely transformed him. And because he went there with a file of LSD and wanted to give it to all the gurus. So he gave it to this teacher. The guru drunk it all the way down, the whole lot, enough to take
Karoli Baba, was it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
it has to
I
be.
couldn't remember his name for a minute.
He's brilliant.
He took the file of LSD and just sat there and twinkled and said, and he said, no change. He said, no, it's just siddhis, that's all it is, you know. And he completely gave up and just worshipped the guru and taught for a long time. He died a few years ago.
That's right.
In LA there, and had a whole ashrams and think absolutely Baba Ram Das. Well, anybody watching this video, if it still stays on
Richard Alpert. Huh?
Yeah, Richard Alpert, of course it is. Yeah, that's I couldn't think for a minute. I'm getting old.
And Julia Roberts follows Neem Karoli Baba as well. Julia Roberts, Pretty Woman, the actress. She also, many celebrities have had incredible experiences. So Neem Karoli Baba was a fabulous guru, absolutely amazing. Avatar, he was an avatar, no doubt.
I went to
and
his
also
ashram.
Siddhi Ma near Rishikesh, right? And Siddhi Ma, I've met her near Rishikesh, and my spiritual father was very close. He spoke a lot, very highly of him. They knew each other well, and great saint. Who would disappear? Neem Karoli Baba. He was here, and then he would vanish. And he had incredible cities. Now that there's the most important things about his teachings.
Amazing.
But,
Craig has.
I went to his ashram in Rishikesh too. It's amazing. When I was there, I just felt him with me. I mean, it was just. I mean, really, seriously, felt him talking to me as I was walking through there. Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
Definitely.
Craig, what about Sharavana Baba? What is his take on future events and how we should approach them? Has he said anything on that?
He hasn't given me any direct teachings on that actually yet. I would like to. The problem is you get little grasps, little bits with them. I'm seeing him shortly, I hope. I've just been sorting it out today to try to get the something set out. So I hope he might tell me a few things about it. He kind of knows, but it's funny today because I said to Jane, we've got to go and see him in June. And as I finished, because some friends are coming over in June and we could all go together. And as soon as I finished speaking, my phone pinged and an email came in and said, would you like to come and see him in June?
Wow.
I thought, that was today. And I thought, crikey. out of the blue. That's not someone I'm corresponding with all the time. It was just and so these things happen. And I think, I think that the enlightened teachers, that was quite interesting what you picked up on there, Ingrid. It's not important whether they can bilocate or do disappear and appear and things like that. But to me, it's like Sai Baba said, miracles are my visiting card. There's so many people out there that claim enlightenment, for example. I mean, they're all out there, all on YouTube. I'm an enlightened, you're not, and listen to me because I'm an enlightened being, And then I look at them and I say, well, if you're enlightened like that, if you've understood the absolute, then you would have transcended mind, you would have transcended the normal human state, and you would naturally have all the city powers, bilocation, omnipresence. They would naturally all be with you, because that is what a complete enlightened human being is. They happen. They're not things they earn. They're just their free gifts. Whoops. And I think I'm back. I don't know.
You too. You disappear, you reappear.
Yeah. Someone's playing a game with us, I think, here, disappear and reappear. Because we're talking about a lot of powerful guys, aren't we? And women, not just men, actually. There's a lot of good female gurus too. Sorry.
Craig, one thing I wanted to say, some of these places that you mentioned, like India and Sheila, you live in India, so you can speak to this. And places like Jerusalem, I unfortunately have not been able to have pilgrimages to those places, and I'm hoping that my future holds them and the world doesn't get to a place that we can't travel. But it seems as if they're in another dimension already. Jerusalem, India, and I've just had a number of close friends that have visited them, and they talk about a completely different energy field than what I'm experiencing in the United States. So I think that the land, like you said, these gurus and these avatars, they carry an energetic, and they can change the energy of the room and the people that are surrounding them. Well, places obviously carries those similar energetic. You just have to go to that frequency and you're transformed, much like what a guru does. So it seems like these places you're describing, from what I've heard from friends, that they are already in another dimension.
Yeah, I think these places have a special energy. There are certain places, like Jerusalem's another one, isn't it? Jerusalem is I went down onto the Dome of the Rock, and you could go underneath the Dome of the Rock. They used to let you into the bottom of underneath the Dome of the Rock, and we went down under the Dome of the Rock. So that would have been the place where the first temple had been built, the temple of where Jesus overturned the tables and everything, like the Jewish temple, And the energy there was, and there's black rock underneath it, I believe, but the energy there was just so, couldn't explain it. There was a real power there, a real power of a certain place. And I think all these holy places of pilgrimage, even Stonehenge up the road from me, it's kind of been swamped by tourism now, so its energy gets a bit lost. But Avery Ring, for example, still has it. You can sometimes at night at Avery Ring, there's a real eerie energy to the past there. And I think these places are really, really good and really, really powerful. But we don't ultimately, no place is going to enlighten us, is it? The great teachers that have become enlightened beings have often sat in caves. Like I've sat in the caves near Rishikesh. There's the caves up there where I sat, where a number of teachers are supposed to have become enlightened in that cave. And it was just which one? Vashishtagua? I can't remember the name of it. There was two. There was the main cave, but there was another one that people didn't know about, that you had to walk along the side of the river to get to. Okay. And there's no paraphernalia there, no doors, no nothing. It's just a little cave. And that was supposed to be the place where Jesus sat to become enlightened, because he's supposed to have gone to India and he sat in the caves. I get all the names muddled up, Ingrid. I'm ever so sorry. I've got a memory like a sieve when it comes to names. And we sat there in that little cave on the turn of the Ganges, and we sat there and meditated for a while, and it was like there was a timeless feeling to it, absolute timelessness to it. And I think these places are beautifully important, but the energy is because of the people that were there before. I think it's about these, it's like the whole of India, isn't it, Sheila? It's a bit like they say that so many people have trod enlightened people have trod the paths of India, that the whole land is infused with enlightenment. You know?
I wanted to it happened just 2 days ago. My sister-in-law follows a guru. It's a different guru from mine, but I am a great believer that all the gurus are wonderful. And I would love to go to Jerusalem one day, for example, you know, and maybe visit where Jesus came. Anyway, my husband wanted to go to just, if you like, pray at this place. And I agreed to go with him. And it was quite a walk. We had to walk for 45 minutes non-stop, very difficult to get to. Now, this guru is supposed to be, if you like, avatar of Shiv, the god Shiv, which, as you know, has snakes around him, because Hindus don't fear snakes because the background is very different from Christianity, where the serpent is seen as the tempter, if you like, or evil. We don't see it that way. We see a snake as very holy. Anyway, coming back to my point, this place, I love going to this place because the guru, when he was alive, specifically said, I want the mandir to be made, the temple to be made here. And there's a beautiful statue of Shiv with the snakes behind. We call that Sheshnag. Nag means the snake. And I found out the other day that when they were making that mandir, they had to dig, obviously, the ground. When they dug, a whole load of snakes came out from there. So, of course, the workers were extremely scared, and the guru was alive at that time. And he said, don't worry, you go back, they'll be gone. And they were gone. So when the workers completed that area, the guru had specifically said that that would be the area. Now, coming back to Craig's point about, you know, or others' point that maybe in India there's some spiritual richness there because you get such great avatars coming from there and gurus. I think one of the other reasons is, yes, they are born enlightened. I don't deny that. But in each and every case, they spend years, like Jesus did, in meditation. I mean, those 30 years when Jesus, you know, nothing in the Bible has been written about those 30 years, or perhaps it has and it's been removed. And that's another theory. What was he doing then? I think he was developing his spiritual intent. All these gurus, I follow Ramakrishna, and even though he was born enlightened, he spent years in spiritual practice, and some of them are such difficult practices. I couldn't do something like that. So I think that's one of the other reasons, you know, yes, not to resort to drugs, but to resort to inward spiritual development, which I know Craig talks about, which I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't do enough of it. I would like to very soon. But that's probably one of the reasons that there is that in India. Just my take on it.
I think a lot comes from austerities too, doesn't it, Sheila? Actually, when you look also at a lot of the great teachers, and often some of the ones that nobody's ever heard of, you know, I mean, I quite often read about Siddhas and things like this, and there's guys that have spent their whole life with their hand above their arm like this until it's completely fossilized. Now, I'm not sure that's a good route to spirituality, but the concept of it is it's tapas, that you allow suffering. It's a bit like happens with the Agori yogis, you know, which I also met in India, which are pretty strange guys, but they take on almost pain in order to transcend it, so that they can just see it as sensation and nothing more. Pleasure, pain, and no interest to them. They've transcended the world, you know. And same too with that incredible man that I saw that sleeps in the fire, Mahananda Swami. He sleeps in a fire, you know. Incredible, impossible things to do. And he was a rich man before and gave it all up to do this. It was the tapas that he did. To quick in the West, we all want quick, easy solutions. You know, if I go to the doctor, I want a pill, sort me out. You know, don't give me a lifestyle that I've got to change. Don't tell me to eat less or to eat differently or go vegetarian or something. No, just give me a pill to clear the ill. And we inspect this instantness, and it's become worse than ever, really, because of the nature of the way we expect it with knowledge as well. We expect to have instant knowledge. We just look it up on Google and that's it. Therefore, we know we don't need to remember anything even. So the work's taken out. And this is the danger, I think, with any shortcuts to nirvana. They don't work. You have to put the work in. The same thing happens very much so too when it comes to mediumship. You know, I mean, to develop my mediumship, I mean, it came very quickly for me, really, I think, because I started developing quite quick. But I did 2 or 3 years in circle before I was able to go out and start demonstrating, and then as a fledgling, and then I did 15 years in, or maybe more, 15 years regularly demonstrating in spiritualist churches, and then another 15 years sort of still doing it and doing theatres and things, and I still haven't developed. You know, I still feel there's so much further you can go. And yet people come and sit in a circle, for example. I remember one person said to me, "I've been sat in your circle, Craig, now for nearly 6 months, and I really do think by now I ought to be out there being able to be professional." You know, you've only just started, mate. You know, and it's the same with all of it. You know, with yoga too, people expect to, you know, become great yogis and be able to do these extreme things tomorrow. You know, so I've lost my track. But you've got to put the work in, haven't you? You've got to put the work in.
Well, the Hanged Man in the tarot deck, I mean, he was supposed to be trying to achieve enlightenment, actually, wasn't he? When you have a look at that card, he's not actually a hanged man and he's dead. What he's doing is trying to achieve enlightenment.
Yeah, because he has the aura around his head, even though he's in the
That's
street.
right, yeah.
That's so interesting, Pat. I've never thought of that card in that manner. I had no idea.
Oh, you have a good look at it and see
excellent.
What you feel from it. Yeah, that was what I saw when I first saw it.
Wow.
I thought, you know, that he's not a hanged man at all. He's not a dead hanged man. He's got the halo around his head. That was what, and he's got a certain look on his face that says that he's trying to do something. Yeah. So.
In fact, some of the Romans used to sometimes crucify people upside down too, actually. It was one of their...
Yes, Paul was crucified. Paul was crucified that way, wasn't he? Because when he said to Jesus said to him that in your last days you shall see the earth as the sky and the sky as the earth. And if you remember, the cross was, he was told, we're going to crucify you by the Romans. And then he said, no, that's too much. My Lord died that manner, please invert the cross. And that's what happened. He died and Jesus's prophecy was fulfilled.
Yeah, incredible.
That's how he died.
Yeah, all these I mean, when you look at the history of all the great holy teachers, I wish Christianity would Yogananda said, I wish the Christians would take Jesus down off the cross and actually listen to the teachings and not worry so much about the crucifixion itself, but the teachings are what's important, you know. And
he wrote a wonderful book that is the Yoga of Jesus, and that is a parallel between the teachings of Jesus and the Vedanta, and it's fantastic.
It's an abridge of these ones. Have you seen these ones?
Oh,
2 volumes.
Yes. Oh,
massive, and they're absolutely beautiful. If you ever can get hold of them, look at it's done like a classic with beautiful illustrations.
Look at that.
You know, and
that's a treasure.
All the way through.
Is that the Yoga of Jesus? This
is what the Yoga of Jesus was taken from. It's a abridged version of the second, he calls it the second, look at beautiful illustrations. It's
stunning.
Yogananda wrote this series, which is two massive volumes. It take, you know, like it's with Yogananda's books, it takes a lot of reading, even the Yogananda's books. So this is the second coming of Christ, the resurrection of the Christ within you. Which in its title is quite interesting. He explains the idea of the Christ, not just as being a name, but you know, as being the enlightened state. Really, the enlightened state. That's what the Christ is. It's the enlightened state. And Yogananda wrote those books. He wrote those. Plus, he wrote the Bhagavad Gitas. Have you seen his Bhagavad Gitas as well that he wrote? beautifully illustrated as well. He wrote those at the very end of his life in the last few years, and he wrote them completely, just dictated them. He just dictated them. I can't remember the name of the woman he dictated them to. He just dictated them. And the problem is, when Yogananda died, just like when Jesus died or when Sai Baba died, all the devotees come in and decide they're going to take control of things. And these books weren't published until about year 2000. They were not even around, you know. They didn't even allow them to be published because everybody argued about the footnotes. So there we go. But anyway, sorry, I've gone off on a tangent again. We can get on to
No, they
So
look beautiful.
Kathleen, you can just go sit in the cave, Kathleen, wherever you are, and read those books, and you'll be just like in India.
Yeah. And isn't it also the thing, you know, we worry when the great teachers die and we think, oh, they've all gone, but their legacy is in the work they leave behind them, because every single word that has been written by some of the great teachers, even a single sentence of it can take you to enlightenment, you know. And I think we've got such a, nowadays we are so lucky, aren't we, that we can access, you know, in the past, if we wanted to get some knowledge, we might have had to go all the way to Alexandria to look in the libraries of Alexandria, and even then we may not get access to it, even if we could read, or we would have had to go to the Vatican to get the teachings. And same in India too. The scrolls of the teachings were always kept kind of in sacred places. But today we can access all these great teachers. We can even see video of them, you know. There's a fabulous one out there about Yogananda on Amazon Prime that you can go and see as well. What was it called now? Single word. But type Yogananda in, you'll find it. And you can find, of course, if you haven't seen my video film about Mystic Journey to India, it's on Amazon Prime if anybody wants to see it, you know, because that's
Awake.
Free too. Awake. That's it.
Awake.
Yeah, Awake. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. Yeah, so there's a good viewing for you. Beat some of the rubbish they serve us up on Netflix as the next best thing to watch. Well, I also was just going to finish as well on, because Niccolo Avocado asked about abortion, didn't he? I said at the beginning I'd answer that question, because he answered about, you know, it's a big deal at the moment. Well, it is a big deal about abortion and things like that. And he wanted to know when the spirit actually is inside the womb. Well, I don't suppose any of us could really answer that question, but there has been a lot. There's a number of spiritualist teachers, and there was a spirit guide called Silver Birch that used to give a lot of very, very powerful teachings, and it's been taken as one of the main teachers of spiritualists. And the thing he said when the spirit enters the baby, it enters at the time of the quickening. So I think that would be between about 17 and 20 weeks. I think that the quickening usually happens. So prior to that, according to the spiritualists, and most of my teachings have come from spiritualism initially, the soul enters the womb at 17 weeks earliest, you know. So whether that can justify abortion before that time or not is a very difficult one. It's you know, I think it's something that I think with all rules and regulations about life, particularly moral rules and regulations, you have to always add that it depends on the circumstances, doesn't it? You know, whether something like this is done for convenience, or whether something like this is done because, you know, they're a victim, there's illness there, or there's a rape or something like that. You know, there's always every single sort of moral rule. Even when it comes to thou shalt not kill and things like that, this always depends on the circumstances and the situation, because nothing is set fast, I think, in what we can and cannot do in the world. I think everybody always wants easy to follow rules all the time. They want things that can just follow that rule and that's how it works, but it don't, you know. Yeah, Kathleen, you were going to say something.
Yes, how does that, I mean, again, we don't really know. We know what their certain theories are. I've been personally unable to discern or with any certainty of what is actually correct. Like, for example, there's the notion of contracts. Before, when your soul is on the other side, you've set up a contract, you've determined who your parents are, where you're going to be born, your talents, et cetera, et cetera. So that actually would, if that was true, if it didn't enter until it was 17 weeks, which is a little over 4 months, I just calculated that, that would negate the theory that you choose these things. I mean, you could also choose the abortion. The baby could only want 4 months in the womb. That's all they wanted to experience as a soul. So that would negate that theory that you make all these decisions on the other side. What do you think about that?
Just unmute myself. I don't think you do make all the decisions on the other side, personally. I think you make a bit of the decision. I think this is how I understand it. We have multiple lives. We come back here again and again to the earth to learn. Between those multiple lives, we have the periods in the spirit world where we have a period of rest, recuperation, and resolving and absorption of what we've done in this world. So the objective of being in the spirit world is to integrate things, just like in sleep, we integrate the experiences of the day. And I think when we go to the spirit world, we consolidate all what's been happening to us in this life. And then we need to progress further, because I think you can only achieve the full advancement of enlightenment here on earth. Because I think you have to be able to find the awakening even in the most darkest of places. And that's why so often the great saints and the teachers have often gone through very, very hard paths, because you find it in the worst of circumstances. You know, it's like when I gave up cigarettes. I said the best time to give up cigarettes is when I'm most stressed, because then next time I feel most stressed, I won't want to go back to them. And it worked, you know. So you test it in the hardest of circumstances. But I think when the contract we make is determined, I think we partly have a bit of a say in it, but we can't say, I'm not going to go back to the world again, because that can't be the case, because you're also driven by your karma. So your karma determines that you're going to live again. Your karma determines the womb you're going to be born in. Your karma determines many of the things that are going to work out in this life for good and for bad. That determines it. We don't have as much willpower to decide that we're going to come back and do this, except when we've become an awakened being. Because I think when we awaken more, and there must be degrees of awakening. So I think a great awakened teacher, for example, like an avatar, there's no choice about whether he comes back or not. He just knows when it's to come back. And it's not even, in fact, even he has gone beyond karma, and therefore just everything is done in the perfect harmony of when it's supposed to be, you know. But I think it's a bit arrogant of ourselves to think that we have so much control. I think when it comes to birth, we are brought into this world in order, based entirely upon what we've done before. You know, what we've done before determines what will happen to us and the start. And then when we get here, we have that incredible thing called free will that gives us the choice to make the decision, yes or no, on each path we take through life. And that's all we got, is that free will. And that free will ultimately will bring us to the final decision, to be enlightened, you know. And I think that's how it works. That's my thoughts on it. And I don't think anybody can say what's right and wrong there. But that's my take on it. I don't know how you feel about that. Any other thoughts, you know?
I was just thinking about miscarriages. You know, is perhaps the mother meant to experience that? Was that, you know, perhaps part of her karma? Because I knew somebody who had a number of miscarriages, not just one, which was very traumatic, you know, before she had 2 children. But, you know, maybe that was part of her karma.
Very, very, very hard indeed. I mean, I'm not a woman to know what it's like, but I can imagine it is absolutely devastating. Doris Stokes, the great medium, always used to say, these are the children that just kissed the earth, that they needed, they were such advanced souls that they only needed just to have a taster of the earthly world. And always reminded the people that had lost the children that child will always know that you're their mother, even if they've been here only for a short time and have not even come into birth, you know. I saw a wave there. Oh, that was a bye-bye. Okay. I thought she said, oh, can I say something? To say to her. Anyway, we're coming to the end now, actually, as well. So I'm going to say goodbye to us all now. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn the, I'm going to say goodbye to the people from YouTube that have been joining us on this. And I'll turn this off, the recording off now, and if anybody's got anything they want to share, they've been wanting to say something or ask something and rather say it without the camera on them, you can do that after I've turned off. So thank you for joining me, you guys, everybody here on Zoom. Thank you for everybody that watches it on YouTube. And if you want to become a patron, it's in the description below, and you can have a look and see how to become a patron and come and join us on Zoom or watch these Zooms through Patreon as well. So thanks for joining us. See you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.